because of the factors that we attribute to the use of violent discipline, we want to reduce these factors so that schools can be safe places for students to learn and develop to their full potentials. So ICCT is delivered to teachers in their school settings, within their school settings. We don't take teachers out of their schools. And it is a program that is provided by 2 trainers in the school settings, and it involves 5.5 days to deliver the program. It has a number of topics ranging from exposing teachers to the behavior problems of students, how to deal with these behavior problems, and also to change strategies on how parents as well as teachers communicate towards ending the forms of violent discipline. So the research question that guided the project or this presentation is ICCT a feasible and effective intervention in reducing violent discipline by teachers in the school settings of Tanzania? We did this in 12 primary schools, and we trained 96 teachers. I will not go much into the details because this now is more academics, but we had 2 groups, the control groups and the intervention groups. So in those schools that we trained, we found that teachers, first we found that the ICCT was a feasible intervention, and the feasibility of it was in such a way that the demand of the intervention, both at baseline and also during the intervention and also at follow-up, was high. Above 90% of teachers indicated that this was a best intervention or a good intervention that is highly needed by the society and other teachers. Then there was high acceptability of the intervention, both after training and also during follow-up 1. And follow-up 1 was done actually 6 to 8 months after the training. And also the applicability, teachers indicated that they could apply the content of the training to their daily teaching activities, but also the integration of the training. For the effectiveness, we could see that, so I think it's very small to display, but we found that the effectiveness of the intervention was moderately in the intervention group, because there was a reduction in the teachers' attitudes towards violent discipline, but also there was a reduction in teachers' use of physical violent discipline strategies. However, we couldn't find the effectiveness of the intervention in teachers' reduced use of emotional violent discipline. We have some explanation about this, but I think also we found that there was reduced use. So it stopped. There was a reduced use of peer-to-peer violence within the children themselves. So we could find that there was a spillover effect of the intervention beyond the intervention group. So I will go quickly to say that the discussion of this is that ICCT as an intervention seems to be an effective intervention to reduce violent discipline in the school settings of Tanzania, but then it indicates that violent discipline is just like a norm in our societies. So we have to intervene. We have to fight this in order to make schools safe places for our children to stay. Then the implication is that all participatory approaches that a lot have been explained here. So we insist that there should be participatory approaches in the process of developing interventions to reduce all forms of violence against the children. Sorry? And yeah, there are some limitations, but I would like to stop there and say there is a high need to bring together all interventions that have been proven to be effective in reducing violence of all forms against children. Thank you, and I'm sorry for spending more of your time.
Thank you, Mr. Puri. Please, a round of appreciation. Better, please. Thank you, thank you. It's a challenge that you have so much content. In fact, 10 minutes is in service, but we are pretending it's okay. Allow me to interject by there's a presenter who is here. I had not seen her. Dr. Susan Wandera, please take the stage. Yes. So Dr. Susan, she came and I had not seen her. She's going to talk about psychosocial services to male child sexual abuse survivors in Kenya, a critical review. Now we are changing gears again back in Kenya, and there are lessons we've learned from the children in Tanzania. Karibu sana.
Good morning. It is not afternoon. Sorry, yeah. Thank you. This is a presentation from me. I'm Dr. Susan Wandera, my colleagues, Dr. Emily Stati, Dr. Rogers. We are from the Department of Education, Desta University, and we work very closely with the Department of the Institute of Child Development. Okay, we have a critical review on the psychosocial services to male child sexual abuse survivors in Kenya. It's really a critical review. We actually did this work because we felt that the male child, to some extent, is ignored when it comes to issues of sex abuse. So we looked at it in terms of what is the possession of the male child, what are the services that are there, and I think we all know that the child sexual abuse is actually a very traumatizing to both sexes. And I was happy when I attended the children's session here, and they were able to identify actually sexual abuse as one of the traumas that they are going through. Now, research statistics actually show that sexual abuse among children is quite rampant, with 7.3 of males and 19.7 of females worldwide experiencing some form of sexual abuse before they turn 18. In North America, the preference is 7.5, 23% males, and you can imagine what that kind of percentage. In Asia and Africa, child sexual abuse is at 23.9 and that 4, meaning that Africa, we still have the highest incidence. And specific African countries is, for example, in South Africa, we have the highest, 61% for males and 43% for females. So you can see it is a trend that is slowly creeping into the society, yet we are very silent about it. Tanzania had 25% and 31% preference rate among males and females respectively. In Kenya, the percentages are a bit low, but that is not low because we are talking of 22 and 17%. So you can see the percentages are quite disturbing. And the question is the silence, because we have buried our hands in the sand, not only on the female, but worse still on the male. And we felt like the patriarchal nature of our Kenyan society actually limits the disclosure. We tend to bring up our boy child telling them, mwanaume ni kunyamaza na kujikaza. Even in pain that is destroying them, we still encourage the silence. We still encourage the silence even when the inner core of the community is being destroyed. And because of the secrecy and the stigmatization, then you realize that there's very little that we are doing. because even the families, the child, the community, the school, the teachers, nobody really want to talk about how children are going through a lot of trauma, especially the boy child. We have been struggling with the female disclosures when it comes to sexual abuse. You can imagine now where we are talking about the male child, and yet the male child are experiencing various forms of sexual violence in their lifetime. And most of those who have been sexually abused have a mixture of varied feelings. And I like the children told us here that they deal with emotional trauma, they deal with depression. And so our objective was really to look at what are the psychosocial support services offered to the male child sexual abuse survivors, and also to assess the community's response to the male child sexual abuse in Kenya. Now, the argument is really there is very low rate of the male child sexual survivors reporting. And why? Because the concept of masculinity is actually promoted above vulnerability. It's like you are a man, you should not become vulnerable. So we are so masculine that our boy child is getting destroyed. And we also did some slight research on a small magnitude, where we have also realized that there are higher suicidal rates among the boy child than the female child in this country. And I think to some extent there might be a relation between the various forms of violence. Sexual abuse may be one of them, and the suicidal rate among our boy child. And the men are here. I hope you are going to take up this so that we can see how the sexual violence against male can also be given the seriousness it deserves. Otherwise, the children who are abused also become abusers themselves. That's the unfortunate bit. When a male child is sexually abused, they also turn it around, they also become the abusers of another boy child. It was done to me, I can do it, and ultimately it becomes a norm in a clique of the young men and young boys. So there is that need to actually look at how we can have the protection and care of the boy child, and if possible, try to eliminate that issue. Now, the study was guided by the Prevention and Intervention Framework, which gives a very comprehensive and systematic way of addressing child sexual abuse at primary, secondary, and tertiary levels. And the purpose is really to reduce the effect and to see how can we ensure that we are having services to this very silent group. Of course, I have said it is a critical literature review, and we actually looked at various journals, books that are talking about the male child sexual abuse. There are various forms that we came across, and they are there: masturbation, exhibition, fondling, and even sex of any kind. And broad shame, self-doubt, and the worst is the low self-esteem becoming a post-traumatic stress. In fact, it's able to say that most young men who get abused when they are young, they don't even become strong family men. And that is why maybe some of our boys are saying they don't have the male figures who can be mentors and coaches in their life. Maybe it is one of them. So, and those ones who have survived actually have to deal with mental health issues much more than compared to women. So what kind of psychosocial support? We felt that we need as a community to come together and see what kind of awareness can be given to parents and caregivers, the community, on the importance of love, care, and protection, so that these children can first have disclosure, and then when they have accepted, yes, it has happened, how can they be taken through support that will make them reclaim the dignity that has already been lost. Because the dignity that is lost by the male child after sexual abuse is equal or worse than the one of the girl child. Their mental and emotional and behavior later after the trauma of the abuse is evident. And we know, I don't have to give even the other day, we saw the people who like this gentleman who has abused several of them, most of them are male. Recommendations that we need to have parenting support groups, because we feel the psychosocial services can also be given by parents in their home environment. Bringing together parents of children who have gone through similar experiences so that they can have reflections on ways in which they can improve the situation. And this will improve not only the psychosocial well-being, but also improve on these young people's mental and emotional stability. Homegrown solutions. As a country, what can we do to challenge the norm that only girls are at risk? That the society needs to come to the realization that the boy child is equally at risk, and see how we can provide platforms for male child to articulate sexual abuse. Let them tell their story. How can we encourage the young men to tell their story about being victims of sexual abuse, and also facilitation of behavioral standards in family and community levels? So I want to believe that we are going to narrow down into one county, preferably Nairobi, so that we are able to identify and come up with the actual figures within a given county. And as Daystar University, our FEC is very passionate about the empowerment of the boy child. And I know with this help, next time we are going to have a very comprehensive report in terms of what the possession of the male child sexual abuse is in this country. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Susan. Thank you. That's a wonderful presentation. And I'm really thinking about, you have a plant, when you plant trees, you put them, where do you put them? There's a seed bed and there's a nursery. So our children are in the nursery. So she's evoking me to think about when the plants in the nursery have gotten rained on. That was a safe place. What do you do for the male child plant that has been rained on while in the nursery? Thank you so much. I'd like to invite our next presenter, Dennis Menya. Dennis, yesterday I was privileged to be with him. We made another presentation that was very great. Dennis, karibu sana. And he's still taking us to Sierra County where he works. That's what he told yesterday. Dennis, karibu sana. And there are lessons that we are learning from him also. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Good morning or afternoon? Afternoon. Good afternoon. Yes, I'm Dennis Menya. I work with the Catholic Medical Mission Board in Sierra County. And I'm here to present on best practice on just related to child protection. Just to introduce you, realize that most of the laws of the land, basically the legal frameworks, envisages just the arrest and conviction of the perpetrators, but the survivors are given very little, basically, support in the laws. So I want to present on the psychosocial support to SGB survivors, especially children. So, yes, so I just want to present on evoking local solutions and basically leveraging community mobile response to SGB survivors for enhanced psychosocial support. So the background, we all know that sexual gender-based violence and basically human rights barriers hinders access to health services, both worldwide and in Kenya. Then we also know that survivors, children, especially children, encounter physical, emotional, and psychosocial hurdles in accessing or seeking care in our various institutions. So accessing essential post-violence care services like PFA, which is psychosocial first aid, and especially in, where we come from, we work in CIA, is challenging due to high levels of stigma among the survivors. So we also want to say that from the court records in CIA, almost 60% of the cases in the courts are SDPV cases. Yes. So description. What are we implementing to support this? So what we did, this was a 9-month project at the initial phase. So what we did was to enroll or basically enroll, recruit 12 community resource persons. These resource persons are people who had basic training on counseling. So we again trained them on specific trauma counseling for SDPV survivors. So after the training, we established 4 trauma response hubs. So these were just physical locations, basically safe places in the various interior areas of the sub-counties. These places survivors would drop in, they could be referred to, and we had these trauma response hubs being managed by the community trauma responders. So we did screening through the community trauma responders, screening of the survivors through doing legal aid clinics, during outreaches, and also just drop-in, referred by the chiefs, by the paralegals. So we were doing trauma, basically screening, and then to determine the eligibility of these survivors to be linked to psychosocial support. So those who identified with trauma were referred, as I said, for personalized sessions and case management. We formed psychosocial support groups for survivors. These support groups were coded by age, age-specific support groups. And then we were doing monthly debriefs for the counselors to ensure quality. Yes. Yeah. So what did we learn? What were the findings of this? So this strategy demonstrated effectiveness of local solutions. Basically, we realized that the results highlighted the effectiveness of utilizing local resources to address the effect of SDPV, particularly in the context of resource-limited settings and shortage of counseling experts. The second thing is, or lesson learned or finding is that we realized that from within those months we did this project or intervention, we managed to screen 198 survivors. 76 were linked to the support groups, and who are meeting monthly and were provided with therapy. Also, apart from psychosocial support group, those who had advanced effects, trauma effects, were also enrolled for one-on-one sessions, counseling sessions, or individual sessions, and 35 of them went through and concluded individual counseling, which were going for up to 10 sessions for them to cope with the situation, the experience. Yes. So the other one is socio-economic and legal support. Through these trauma response hubs, we're able to link 6 with to psychosocial socio-economic support, and 4 also are linked to legal support, because maybe their cases were not proceeding, so we linked with the pro bono lawyer to follow up their cases. Some cases had not even started, so we were able to follow through and ensure that the cases were going on. So we talk about empowerment. We provide a secure and supportive environment for survivors to connect, share experiences, access information, and receive emotional support. Then the environment, the trauma hubs were able to foster healing, empowerment, and contribute to improve mental health by survivors. In conclusion, we have witnessed enhanced access with community hubs. So local community counseling hubs can improve access to psychosocial support services, even in resource-constrained settings. We talk about empowerment and healing. So embedding these pieces in within the community's response to SGBV, empower survivors, aids healing, supports integration, and ultimately helps in reducing SGBV cases. So we are looking at this as a model for future interventions. So community-led PSS sets valuable precedent for future interventions, demonstrating the effectiveness of local community involvement in addressing SGBV. Then the last conclusion we are looking at it, or next step is advocating for comprehensive approaches, that we're able to approach, that this approach underscores the significance of a comprehensive strategy in embattling community, gender-based violence. So we're basically advocating for inclusion or integration of community PSS into SGBV response. Thank you very much. I want to acknowledge all the partners that supported this conference. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dennis. It's a great lesson that we're having from Siaya County. I was listening and I was trying to get 1 or 2 lessons, and the word you said, follow through. I learned something very significant. We can have interventions, but we do not do what? Follow through to the end. And there's something for us to do there. And then he spoke of local resources. That's another challenge we have in our interventions. Thank you. We'd like to go to our last presentation before we have discussions. Please remember to write down your question. You can have a good presentation that comes and then you forget, what was my question before then? So I'd like to invite, turn to page 65 of our programs. Please come, Florence. So Florence has been my colleague once. Florence Kagweru, issues impeding efforts to mitigate vulnerabilities predisposing children to violence. The context of Kenya's low-level settings. She was reminding me, not middle. So there's a correction in the program. Low-level settings. Karibu sana, Florence.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
My name is Florence Kagweru from the Technical University, and I'll be discussing issues impeding efforts to mitigate vulnerabilities that predispose children to violence in Kenya's low income. And on introduction, worldwide there's 1 billion children who are suffer one form of violence or the other between the age of 2 to 17 years. And Kenya has 23.5 million children, that is 50% of Kenya, who are vulnerable, 11.7% who are multidimensionally poor. Now, when we talk of the low income settings, we're talking of neighborhoods that earn below income of below the average national income for a country. In Kenya, we're talking about 20,000. So that's a household that's earning, surviving below, on an income below 20,000. And we say 77% of the minimum wage. As we move on, the purpose of the study is to identify the factors that impede efforts to mitigate vulnerabilities, predisposing children to violence in low-income setting. And the study will be guided by 3 research questions. One, it will be asking about what vulnerabilities are there that predispose children to violence, what the mechanisms that the government has put in place, and finally, what are those factors that mitigate, that impede the efforts to mitigate vulnerabilities that affect children. We'll be guided by the ecological systems theory. The study is underpinned by the ecological systems theory, which has 5 subsystems: the environment in which a child interacts, and we have the microsystem, that is the immediate environment that the child lives, that is where the parents is, where the neighbors are, the school. Then the mesosystem, that is the interconnection, the communication between the 2 systems. Then we have the exosystem, that is the indirect environment. For example, there's a child here who talked about parents who are working are blaming the economy on working throughout the time, so the children don't see them. So that is an indirect environment, an ecosystem, whereby the child is indirectly affected based on the fact that the child doesn't go to that office or wherever the parent works, but the effect of whatever the parent does affects the child. Then the microsystem will look at the social, the cultural, the government policies, the laws that are in place, and the chronosystem, that is the change over time. So the methodology, the study used mixed method, that is quantitative and qualitative. Snowball sampling technique was used, as well as document content analysis. Secondary data was collected from the review of formal reports from government and databases containing matters to do with violence and children. And primary data was collected through in-depth interviews. Data was analyzed through charts and tables and graphs. And for the qualitative data, thematic framework was used. So the finding from the study, the findings were organized based on the research questions and the emerging themes that came from the research question guided the findings. The first one was under the vulnerabilities that predispose children to violence. There were 5 themes, and the first one was poverty. Poverty was a theme. We've just seen that 77% live below the income, the average income of a country. So you can imagine how many people are poor in Kenya. So there's, of course, poverty brings increased stress, leading to domestic violence. Children are in the middle of this. We are talking about the mesosystem, the interaction between the micro and the people in the microsystem. So there's increased stress leading to domestic violence, lack of privacy. There's lack of privacy for the children because the homes, everybody, there are very, 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 very many people in one household. Girls respond to prostitution, and in the course of prostitution, they get sexually violated, among others. Of course, there's proliferation of street children. Most of the street children we're seeing out there, it's because of the poverty in their respective homes. So we look at based on the Kenya Domestic House Survey and the Violence Against Children Survey 2019, we're looking at those statistics, and we realize that sexual violence between 2019 and 2020, when we compare the results of the 2 surveys, reduced by 8.4% in females, while physical violence reduced by 19.8% in females, that is girls, and 22.7% in boys, which means that the country is in a very positive trajectory when it comes to fighting the violence against children. The finding number 2 was the mental illness. That was another theme that emerged, that the mental illness of a caregiver really affects the way the child it brings about the vulnerability for the child, because that parent is unable to take responsibility for the child, and the child is exposed to emotional, behavioral, and also cognitive difficulties. The parents who are also mentally impaired, they are very aggressive. It's not their wish, but it's just the condition to which they are. The level of education of parents, most of the parents who are not properly educated in these low-level settings will use their mental models to guide the children. These are the parents who will say corporal punishment is better than guiding the child. So that becomes a problem. Then, of course, the harmful cultural practices. There's the female genital mutilations. The KDHS report 2014, the prevalence was 21%, and 2022 report from KDHS, the prevalence was 19%. So that reduced by 3%, which is quite commendable. There's the aspect of child marriage. This study, I was able to interview key informants from different counties, those people who deal directly with children, and they told me that they informed the research that child marriage is rampant, especially in the low-income community, low-income settings, that is impeding the efforts that the government is trying to do to alleviate VAC. There's the aspect of cattle rustling in some communities. Young boys, when they're gotten to a certain RICA and they want to get married, they have to amass wealth, and to them the wealth is the cattle or the whatever, the camels and stuff. So they have to go and, go cattle rustling, so that they can get the wealth to marry out that girl. Then research indicates that most harmful practices happen in the lowest quartile of the population, just like I have said. The final finding for that particular research question was the digital exposure. Now these people, we are always on the digital network, and we are calling ourselves net citizen. As net citizens, the children will go through exploitation. There's cyberbullying, child pornography, child prostitution, and radicalization. These are digital exposure is an emerging theme in the country that the government should really, push to ensure that the children are protected. The second research question was the policy, strategies, systems, and legal framework that the government has put in place to mitigate VAC. We've seen that the government has formulated child protection policies, which include the Kenya National Policies on Children, the National Plan of Action for Children. There's National Prevention and Response Plan on VAC, which was a response to the VAC survey of 2019. And then there's the Kenya Roadmap for Advancing Gender Equality and Ending All Forms of Violence. So those are just samples, but the government has done much more. There are enhanced system and strategies, like there's the CPIMS, there's Child Helpline, the Vurugu Mappa, that's a very interesting strategy, as well as Pasha mobile app for FGM. Second is the adoption and enactment of the legal framework. The Kenya became a signatory to the UNCRC in 1990, and then also the African Charter for the Rights and the Welfare of Children in 2000. Constitution of Kenya, Article 23, which talks about the rights and welfare of the children, and the Children's Act 2022, which reinforces what the Constitution has put in place in terms of protection of children. Of course, there's the Sexual Offense Act and the Trafficking Act in Person of Children. So those are some of the policy strategies, system, and legal frameworks that the government has put in place. The last research question, which answers the question, our study, which is the actual, we can call it the main finding of our research, the issues that impede efforts to mitigate vulnerabilities predisposing children to violence. Now, we've looked at the vulnerabilities that the children go through. We've looked at what the government has done. But now, where are we going wrong? What is it that we're not doing? Number one, the research found four major themes. One was weak enforcement and legislation of policy systems and laws on VAC. The first one was the plural laws. For example, the customary marriage. customary marriage looks like it's supporting child marriage, because most of these children who are being married, especially in those low-income settings, they're using the customary law to do that. So these very many legal, the laws that are in place that conflict with each other should be addressed. Then there's lack of capacity in referral centers to handle that. That's an issue I know the government has grappled with, that a child has been abused and the reception center does not have the capacity to really take care of that child. Then there's also the lengthy and tedious insensitive justice system. In the morning, we were told that children cases should take a maximum of 6 months, but does that really happen in practice? No, it does not. Some of these cases run for years. Then there's ambiguity of laws in defining the child, the age of the child. For example, the Children's Act, a child is 18 years and below. However, when we come to the Employment Act, a child who is 16, who is 16 years and below is allowed to do light work. What is light work? Who is a child? Is there a common ground on who a child is? Then the aspect of corporal punishment. Children's Act 2022 has outlawed corporal punishment. But if you look at the Prisons Act allows children who are 16 years and below to have, to be caned 10 strokes, is in that corporal punishment. So there is some form of ambiguity when it comes to the law. Then law interagency cooperations leading to poor services. So there's the inadequate coordination among the government, the police, the judicial system, the courts, the institutions, and the field services. And again, the child protection officers also working in silos. You have information and you don't want to share with the other colleague which can help. That is also an issue. As we progress, so lack of, as I complete, there's the aspect of inadequate funding and reduced multidisciplinary cooperation. So I'll just go to the major finding, the main recommendations. I won't do all of them. The government to create fund for affordable housing, especially for the street children, so that we can get them out of the streets. Have a comprehensive public awareness program and campaigns of the dangers and of the retrogressive practices. Then we can, the government should also, the county governments should contextualize policies that have to do with FGM. We were told in the morning that the counties have not quite contextualized the policies to fit their situation in various child protection issues, and then increase capacity of police officers and county area advisory councils to handle violence against children, and then of course harmonization of the laws that have that are not in line. The findings of the study contribute to policy, government policies, and the knowledge. They will add to the body of knowledge in research and as well as practice. Gaps identified, especially in legal systems, will provide basis for review of the laws. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Florence. You've just given an overall, yours was, I think you're carrying all the others together because you're looking at every aspect of child protection. I'd like to invite all the presenters up front for question time. We want to have 20 minutes for questions, hopefully before lunchtime, and we'll close so that we are there. Thank you so much. So we have 20 minutes. I'd like whoever asks a question, please ask one question. Some people have 3 in 1, 2 in 1. Just ask one question to allow someone else to ask a question. And then we are asking first round of questions, 4 questions. Whoever, please just raise your hand. Okay, there's someone at the back. There's someone here. Okay, just take to the back. We'll begin with the question here. Was it you?
Yes, it's me. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for the presentations. You have definitely provoked some thinking. I'm so sorry, I can't remember your name, sir, from Tanzania, the person who did, yes. There's something you said that I picked up on, and apologies if I missed it. 80% of teachers could apply the intervention after the training you did, the ICCT. So I'm curious to figure out what about the 20% that were not able to apply after being trained and taught these mechanisms to deal with children in school. So what reasons did they give, if any, or why couldn't they apply it? What was wrong? Was there any... Yeah, that's my question. Thank you.
Thank you. The one at the back, then someone in the middle. Okay.
Thank you very much. My name is Jackson Onyando. I work for UNICEF in Kenya. I have a question for Madame Yator. I hope that was the correct name.
Correct.
Yeah, on the parenting program that we implemented in Kiambu and Nairobi. I was just worried as to why you chose to implement a model from another country when the government of Kenya is and has been also developing a parenting program. Okay. And how does your findings or your program compare with the program that has been developed by the Directorate of Social Development in Kenya?
Okay.
And then very quickly to Malay.
You're going to a second question.
Sorry. Yeah.
No. Just hold your question. We'll come to the second one.
Okay.
Yes, thank you to all the presenters. My question is to Faustine. In terms of the ICCT delivery, you mentioned that you were targeting all the teachers within their schools. I'm curious just to hear how you went about that. Were you convening them in one classroom, and how were you delivering the various interventions or the sensitization, for just to see if there is something we can pick? Because in Kenya, I think for quite a number of programs that we have targeting teachers, we tend to pick a few from a school, then we have them in a classroom. But I really I found that targeting all the teachers in a school like a more effective way. So I would wish to have more to how we went about that. Thank you.
One last question, then we respond.
Okay. I'm Catherine Kimemia from USAID Tumikia Mtoto Project. My question is for Ms. Florence Kagweru. Could you tell us more who are your study participants and what made snowballing the most efficient sampling method? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Faustine, you had 2 questions, if I remember.
Yeah, thank you for the questions. We start with the reasons why 20% reported not using or applying the ICCT training content after the intervention. As I was explaining, I said that there is a challenge when it comes to programs that aims to change attitudes among our societies. So immediately after the training, during the training, almost above 90% of teachers reported like they will be able to apply this. But when we went back for the follow-up assessment, the number reduced to 80%. And we think that teachers may feel the need to use the intervention directly after the training because they see it as more valuable. But when they bring it to the practice, there is a lot of challenges. And the challenges comes from both the societies. The teachers themselves, when they feel like applying an alternative discipline is a challenge, and also the teachers, not the teachers, the children themselves may give pressure to the teachers. So just one example that after we went back to the schools, teachers said they tried to use the alternative discipline strategies. But then the students realized that the teachers now are very reluctant, that they don't use these commonly used practices like corporal punishment. And they were, okay, so now what? So the teachers are not going to punish us. And then the teachers sees this like something very bad for the schools, and then they just resorted to the use of the common use strategies. So that's what we can say about the change. And yeah, so it's about the attitudes and also how teachers perceive the intervention and its effectiveness. Because the effectiveness is not like direct after the training. So it takes time to change and also to see its impact. And for the other question, that how did we manage to get all the teachers? So our study started with the methodology design that we wanted to target all schools that had a maximum number of 20 teachers at a school. So this was a sampling process. And our intervention is delivered in a class that includes not more than 30 participants. So that is our class size. And all the teachers all the schools that we selected reached to these like selection criteria. So all the teachers found at a school, but all those were employed at a school, not only a temporary basis. So all teachers found at a school participated in the training. So it started with the sampling process. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for that question. USA Tumikia Mtoto is implementing the parenting model called Parenting for Lifelong Health, initially rolled out in South Africa. The model was opted to be rolled out here, getting the funds from PEPFAR and USAID. We opted to stick with that, coming with the guidance from the donor, kindly try and roll out this program. But currently, we've contextualized it further, and we are also borrowing a lot from the government, celebrating families and parenting model. All our facilitators have been taken through the government parenting model, and everything they're implementing with the current Parenting for Lifelong Health is embedded in the national parenting guidelines, and we are getting a lot of guidelines from the government. In fact, they do support our initiatives in the community. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. The first question was, who are my study participants? My study participants were key informants in the child protection area. We're talking about children protection officers. Then there were church representatives, as well as community leaders. Now, one of the limitations of my study was the aspect of time, because for me, there was no much time to go out and give questionnaires, and I was doing a study for Kenya. I had to use snowball techniques where the one informant will lead me to the next and the other, so that I can be able to get what I was looking for the study. So that's the reason I used snowball.
We'd like to have one more session of questions, and I wish I was able to know the question before you asked. I'd like you to ask, especially those who have not responded, one question for the other three. Whoever has a question for the other three? Okay, good. Who else has a question? Just begin, thank you.
Thank you very much, our moderator. My question, incidentally, is to Madam Florence, and this is on the presentation you present. Yes, there was I think there was a finding that the Prisons Act, Cap 90, has provision for corporal punishment for children under 16 years of age. Cap 90 does not deal with the children. The children are under Cap 92, but even then, even for adults and children, corporal punishment was repealed in Kenya. Thank you. In fact, I've had to check with our legal team just in case there's something that we may have missed. I'll just that concern. Yeah.
Thank you for the clarification. And she's speaking from where she works. Thank you so much for that. Yes.
Yes.
Someone else?
Good afternoon. My question goes to Dennis.
Yes.
Dennis talked about the true way. I don't know what that's the right word.
Oh, through care.
Through the victims.
Okay.
Seeing them through the process.
Yes.
And I think he's igniting the gaps we have even in the Department of Children's Services.
Yes.
When you are following up our case, children who have been victims of abuse, I just wanted to ask Dennis, what recommendations would you give so that at least as we embrace the process, because the children are being abused, once the cases are through from court, it's like we have done with that case. But from the psychological point of view, these children are not assisted, and that's why we find we have troubles in the future. Maybe you can give two or two recommendations. What process can we do so that we see these children through?
Thank you. Another question?
Yep, my other question was to Madam Malay.
To who?
Malay.
Molel.
Malele?
Yes, please. Thank you.
The study from Uasin Gishu.
Yes.
Yeah, on what informed the choice of foster care as a care option for the neglected children as opposed to the other family-based care options, like kinship and the rest. Okay. Why did the project directly choose foster as opposed to the other family-based care options?
Thank you. Thank you. Lovely question. Two more questions. Yeah, that hand was up very early. Very early. I saw you very early.
My question is to the presentation from Uasin Gishu. In your recommendations, you mentioned that the government should establish the causes for child neglect. And I was wondering whether you were not able to establish, like in the process of responding, were you not able to establish some of the causes that were leading to child neglect?
Thank you. I'm waiting for one question for Dr. Susan. Susan, the name of my bigger sister, so that name is very important to me.
Okay. My name is Karen Sonzo, Kenya. My question is about the vulnerability in the communities. In most cases, you find that the communities their poverty is in a higher rate, such that they can't have a room to accommodate even their children, whereby you get the family has got more than 7 children, and they are all accommodated in a small and terrible condition room where you can't separate them. No, and you just spoke something about building houses for these children. Help me understand, how can I help this family to get those rooms where the program doesn't fund or give the funding to the community?
Thank you. Great question. Last question. I'm squeezing a last question.
Thank you. This is to Dr. Susan. Hello. Thank you so much for your presentation. It was very enlightening. And yes, we do need to do more about the boy child. So my question is, your recommendation, what do you specifically think we should do next? What are because if you look at preventative measures, it's usually starting from primary prevention, where the parents, the caregivers, what do you think, or we should raise that awareness of men to open up more? What strategies can we provide to the communities to raise that awareness? Thank you.
Thank you. I love your questions. We're going this way as you are. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the question. It has been asked by and I think official from the Director of Children Services. So number one, and even today morning when we were meeting with the NCAJ Standing Committee, I was proposing that we integrate psychosocial support in the justice system, in the post-rape care services, as part of the post-rape care services. Just like the way we provide health services, legal services, are we able to integrate psychosocial support in that process, so that it's one of the requirements, is one minimum package for you to say that a child survivor has been provided with post-rape care services. Number two, for following up, then we must strengthen the community children advocacy committees at the ward level. You see, we have so many committees dealing with the justice issues of children, but a number of them, even us as partners, we support at the sub-county level, at the county level. We have CUCs, we have technical working groups, but we rarely invest in the community committees. My experience is that our program has invested in the ward-based community committees, which brings together most of the stakeholders. And we have seen them follow through these cases. And because they also remain in that community, they are able to monitor even after the case is done away with. So I think those are my two recommendations.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for the question that is on foster care. And the main reason why some of the children were given up for foster care is because you find out that when you want to attach back some of the children to the caregivers within the family setup, maybe the aunties or the relatives, you don't find one who is willing to take up these children. So those children who did not have someone to take care of for them, then we definitely gave up them to foster care as an intervention to mitigate the child neglect cases that were being reported. Then I think on the next question was on the courses as a recommendation for the child neglect cases that were being reported in Uasin Gishu. The main reason why we insisted that they still need to look into what are the root causes for child neglect. It's because we were able, yes, to identify the root causes, but you find out that you will identify this time round and they keep on camouflaging. The root causes keep on coming in and coming out. And I think we realized that across all the counties that were being presented, I was able to attend some of the topics that were being presented. I realized that child neglect was one of the case categories that was reported among the child abuse cases. So we will still go sit down and find out what are the main solutions to these cases of child neglect that are being reported.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. The last but not the least.
Yeah, thank you. About the strategy for awareness about the boy child or the male child sexual abuse cases, the survivors, I may not have really an answer on how to raise the awareness, but I think of greater importance is the realization that masculinity is really some kind of undoing in terms of disclosure and access to service. So I think we need to see when vulnerability meets masculinity, what is on the upper hand. That's the thinking, because when can the boy child become vulnerable to now speak out and make a disclosure about what they are going through? How does the community, how does the society, how do families, churches, and schools respond to cases of boy-child sexual abuse? Because that is very important. How does the family, the society, the schools in entirety, how do we respond to even any violence against the boy child, because we treat it a bit differently from violence against the girl child? Maybe when we sit and we have a round table, the various stakeholders, then we can see how we can voice this very subtle hidden phase of the sexual abuse against the boy child. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Harry. I see that you've brought it well. You're bringing us to a conclusion of our meeting this morning session. And I'm seeing a net. Where we come from, we are fishermen, and the net has different places, one end joins with another. And some of us are looking at the net from the micro level. And then at the macro level, you see the whole net. And each of these presenters are bringing us what the net is coming at different levels, different sides of the net. That's what I'm learning today. Thank you so much. I'd like to say two things. Our sign language interpreters, there are two of them. Thank you so much. Can you say thank you to them? Yes. And I didn't introduce myself. I'm Sydney Achia from the Director of Children's Services. Thank you all. A round of appreciation for our panelists. It's wonderful. Thank you so much. We hope in the next conference you will come again with more lessons for us. Thank you so much. All of us, workshop participants, all of us who listened and asked, we thank you so much. Your presence here made this a great success. God bless you. Lovely afternoon. Bon appetit. Shall we pray? Loving Father, by the mercies of Jesus, we are in your presence. We thank you for this far you've led us. We thank you for the meal that's ahead of us. And we have not seen it, but we thank you because you have seen it. We thank you for the appetite. We thank you for the meeting of each of us together with one another. Bless us even with the meal. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Thank you. God bless you.